Hey everyone, this is titled Ultimate Marketing Channels 2024. We're not going to get into real specifics of content creation. I think this is a good refresher for any attorney that is trying to remember or needs a reminder of what available marketing channels there are, namely in digital marketing. So I want to first start off with this stat here. This is from HubSpot. How many marketing channels do marketers leverage? One, two, three, four, five, and it looks like the overwhelming majority have three active marketing channels, which is, when I read that, it was shocking. And I talked to a few members in our program, and I asked them, hey, before joining us, how many marketing channels did you have? It was between one and two. So I think most attorneys, it's probably between one and two based on my small sample size there. So I want you to keep that in mind because having even five marketing channels is just not going to cut it these days. When I talk to attorneys, they always, rely on a meaningful amount of referrals, which is great, but the reality is that they're finite. Unless, of course, you've made it a priority to extend your network and appear at events and work with, leaders either at the city level, at the government level, or with other attorneys. The reality is referrals are finite. And so if you want to get more clients, you need more eyeballs, and then you're going to subsequently need more attention. And so I'm a big believer that attention is currency. There's a lot of ways to have leverage in your business. There's media leverage, there's capital leverage, but the biggest is attention. It's getting eyeballs. So when we talk about marketing, just in general, I'm not a believer that less is more. I'm a big believer that more is more. And this might be a hot take or controversial take, but when I talk to a lot of other digital marketers, especially those that work in legal or the financial space or, in healthcare, they always want like some kind of like predictability, and they want to have direct attribution. They want to know every single call, why it occurred. They want to know where every click came from. They want to know where every single, a revenue dollar came from, down to the cent, down to the click attribution. But I just generally think that that's super overrated. As I mentioned earlier, more is more. And generally speaking, I feel like measured growth is slower growth. There are competitors right now that you could probably think of that are growing super fast, and you're probably wondering, how is it that they're growing so fast? Generally speaking, I think it's growth that's quite messy. It's probably because they're doing a lot of things at once. They're blitzing their marketing infrastructure. They're blitzing all their efforts. I'm a fan of messy growth. I think it's fantastic because I think more is more. And I've especially taken this side of the argument in recent, I would say the last year or so, because there's a lot of magic happening in, let's call it the great algorithm, the Google algorithms, the YouTube algorithms, the Facebook, the Instagram algorithms, the TikTok algorithms. They're just better at giving us content that we would actually want to watch. So the more we feed all these services without explanation, the algorithms are going to serve that content to a lot of your target market, to the extent that you're going to hear people say, I see you everywhere, if you employ as many marketing channels as possible. So I want to start off by saying this is just a refresher of a list of all the available, I would say, the most effective marketing channels, and really trust that by publishing regularly at high volumes, it will end up being presented in more traffic or more phone calls and consequently more revenue. And you may not be able to explain how all the time, but just know that your efforts will see its rewards on the other side. So I'm not a big fan of taking half measures. I think you should go all in or go home. Because if you're not doing and employing most of these marketing channels, I can say with a high degree of certainty, one of your competitors is. So there are three types of media. There's owned media, which is media that you create and you publish, sort of like your website or your social media profiles. There's paid media, which means you pay a company and they'll broadcast your video or your ad or your blog, and they'll publish it to thousands of eyeballs in exchange for some dollars. Or earned media. Someone says, hey, I like you. I like what you stand for. I like what your company does. I want to cover you. So think of like maybe the news or being invited on as a guest on a podcast. So let's start with owned. This one's super simple. I want to start off with the low-hanging fruit that I've been speaking from the mountains about for the last few months on these videos. It's email and text marketing. Whether or not you've signed someone or not, you have phone numbers, you have names, you have emails. Well, you should. And if you don't, you should be aggregating them in like as something as simple as an Excel sheet or a Google sheet. You want to send 2 to 3 texts a week from services like Constant Contact or MailChimp and Textedly, which allows you to send texts. As long as you have consent and you ask for consent, you should be emailing and texting people regularly. You've already invested in marketing at some point in the past. Those contacts are yours. You've made that investment. Email and text them 2 to 3 times a week. Those services cost, 50 to $100 a month to write a few lines of copy. You can get a copywriter to do that 2 to 3 times a week. We estimate anywhere from $100 to $200 a month at the very entry level basic stage of doing this. Then there's social media video, and I emphasize video. If you're publishing pictures or text updates, that's fine, but the reality is feed the algorithm. The algorithm is favoring video. Your content will be showed shockingly higher amounts if you just serve it video. You'll notice these acronyms here, GMB: Google My Business, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube long form or YouTube Shorts, which is short form, TikTok, X, LinkedIn. You want to publish Monday through Friday. So let's just count this: Google My Business, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube Shorts, TikTok, X, LinkedIn. That's 7 channels, 5 times a week. That's 35 pieces of content. You need someone to help you create content, to help you create prompts, to help you in front of your phone shooting some content like this. You should be able to get someone working with you, 2 to 4 hours a week to collect all your footage and publish it for, $1,000 to $2,000 a month. The virtual assistant, this is low-hanging fruit. I tell everyone that talks to us, like, hey, whether or not we work together, just do something in video. It's just going to pay off. I think that we're here. I mean, this is proof of it. You and I are here on this interaction, this virtual interaction, as a result of us publishing video. Website updates. This one's so underrated, I have to say. You have a website, and I would probably wager it's built on WordPress and it hasn't been updated in at least a year. Unless you have great IT resources or a great agency that's really monitoring your hosting and your site maintenance, your website is a surprisingly fragile asset. If it's built, let's call it with very entry-level methodologies, it can break very quickly just by not clicking update on WordPress. So for us, we have an on-staff IT administration. They manage our whole portfolio of websites. We ensure that no websites go down, that there's no malware, that they're always refreshed with the latest updates. But realistically, you could find someone for, $150 a month to maintain that for you. It's about an hour of work, if not less, for your website. For the most average website, you should be doing this weekly, if not monthly. There is a real risk, malware, hacking, ransomware, in more extreme examples, where your site could be totally vulnerable just by not having routine maintenance. And I think this is critical to owned media, because if someone sees your website and it's compromised, it may not even appear because it's been flagged or it's filtered by a browser or some security mechanism, some software. So it's critical that as much as you want to update your pictures and your photos and your staff updates and maybe even promotions, it's not going to really matter if there's no infrastructure being managed there. So having someone look at this for $100 to $200 an hour, whether it's every week or every month, highly recommended. It's probably the best investment you can make as far as peace of mind and insurance. Blogging, but with video. I'm not a really big believer that most people want to read blogs. I mean, I certainly don't. I want my content delivered pretty efficiently. I want to be able to read something in about 5 minutes and get the gist and move on. Whether or not you agree or disagree, I just believe that the majority of consumers are on that path. And we're seeing that with reduced times on websites per visit from the average consumer. So there's a few added benefits to putting a video within a blog. One, it's just more engaging. You're going to have something to click on for the consumer. They're going to stick around more. They're going to read the content, the corresponding content. It's just great for retention. But two, Google has not made it at all a secret that they value original ways of presenting content. So just throwing a few pictures and text doesn't make you all that special. But if you put a video, let's call it for divorce attorneys, someone who's wondering what the divorce process is like, you could have a 3-minute video, and then you can have corresponding 500 word blog that will only add more credibility to the video and vice versa. And that blog will be given more attention in the greater algorithm for search. Big fan of blogging with video. This should be a standard if you're not already doing this. So having these done for 2 a week, for you to record, to give it to someone to publish and to edit on your behalf, I'm talking like 500 to 1,000 a month for 8 of these. And if you're having someone manage, your most basic level SEO programs, you're looking at 1,500 a month plus to essentially handle this for you end to end. And, just in general, you should be having other folks manage all this on your behalf from end to end. There's a great book called 10x is easier than 2x. The whole concept is about delegating all the things that don't give you leverage. Producing content is a great use of your time, but editing it, publishing it, probably not. So you want to have that delegated out. Webinars are becoming super popular. I see this very popular within estate law, but I could see this being a remarkable channel for immigration, especially in Spanish, family law, adoption proceedings, things of that nature that are delicate, that have a lot of process behind it. The reality is producing your own webinar, you can do it yourself, or you can have a whole production staff do these for you, either weekly or monthly. The purpose of this is just to not only provide value to the community, but establish yourself as an expert in your area of law. And when you're producing these webinars and these blogs with videos and these social media videos, and you're distributing those updates through email and text, it's just going to have, again, that compounding network effect. If you feed all these algorithms, all the content, it will land in front of the right people without explanation. Again, we're talking about messy growth. We're not talking about super specific attributable growth all the time. The idea here is that as you accelerate the volume, rather as you increase the volume at acceleration, it pays off because the algorithms favor that. So own media, you're looking total, let's call it 200 plus 1,000 plus 150 plus another 500 plus another 2,000. You're looking at, let's call it 3,000 to 4,000 just to manage own media by part-timers or contractors. And this is, again, at the most entry level. As you get more sophisticated, as your production values increase, naturally, so will your investment level. So just set expectations. You want to spend a couple grand on managing the house, especially your website. This is most critical than anything else. Paid media. Now, reminder, paid media is what you pay. You pay media channels to broadcast your messages. Again, I tell attorneys all the time, if you're not running retargeted ads, whether or not we work together, this should be one of the highest priority items in your marketing stack. Retargeting ads is really just pushing your ads through paid algorithms in front of people that have visited your social media profiles or your website. That's it. It's like just throw $1,000 behind that each month, 12,000 a year. You're going to show your content, your face. The algorithms will present you in front of those people more regularly on an automated basis, and that gives you scale. I could stop here on the paid ad side, and I won't, but I'm just saying, realistically, just stopping here would change your business overnight. So at minimum, start putting a retargeting ads budget together. Who can you get to do that? We'll get to that in a moment. Local service ads are wonderful. The reality is you pay whenever you get a phone call. Some calls are great, some calls aren't. And anecdotally, most attorneys keep this on because it's cash positive. So some months are better than others, just like every other marketing channel. I'm a big fan of local service ads because it just establishes you as an expert in your area of law, or just a categorized person in a particular area of law. You've got Google ads, Meta, which is Facebook and Instagram video ads. TikTok ads, which are video ads. I think emerging channels like X, formerly Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, these are soon to have really amazing ad products. And I'm a big believer in being early rather than being late to emerging channels. X historically has not had the best outcomes, but there's a lot of evidence that says otherwise now. They've probably improved on their paid ad products. There's directories like Avo, like FindLaw, like all these other places where you can put your picture and your phone number and your website and your text number for, let's call it a few $1,000 every month or quarter for an annual or multi-year agreement. Whether or not they provide direct attributable value to you, I just generally think you should be on directories. They do establish you as a credible attorney, and they give you a backlink, which is great for your SEO, so that when people search for you, they just don't see your website. They see a score of other directories that you're listed in that you paid for. I think that shows some history and credibility more than someone who's fairly invisible on the internet. Now, with these channels, you want to spend a minimum of $1,000 each month. So let's just look at local service ads, Google ads, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, LinkedIn, YouTube Shorts, directories. That's 9 channels. If you add all the other directories, you're probably looking at 20. So am I telling you to spend $20,000 a month? Certainly, if you can, you should. Because again, these are services that are giving you leverage by means of you putting ad dollars down in exchange for eyeballs. If you're not paying for eyeballs, you're not going to get more attention. Thus, you have no currency. And attention is the currency if you want more clients beyond your referrals. So we know attorneys that are spending $20,000 a month. We know some that are spending $250,000, $1 million a month. This is probably where the majority of an attorney's marketing investments go towards. It's paid advertising because it gives you more reach, more frequency, all contingent on however much you can invest. So generally speaking, I'm a big fan of dropping $1,000 into any channel where you're feeding it quality video content. And I lead with video because these algorithms, again, they prioritize videos over everything else. Lastly, for this, you don't want to hire like a virtual assistant. You want someone who has some degree of expertise. If you're lucky, you can get someone for $2,000 a month, even domestically on a part-time or contract basis, who might be a killer Google Ads person or an amazing TikTok advertiser, which may or may not work because a lot of attorney ads get pulled down from TikTok. The reality is you have options, but if you go for the cheapest option, you're going to end up blowing your whole marketing expense without much results. So you need to be spending a minimum $2,000 for a fairly competent person in at least 2 or 3 of these channels to see your dollars deployed correctly. So hire experts, not assistants. Otherwise, paid media assistants, you're going to have to hold their hand, walk them through the whole process, teach them how to use Canva and other video editing tools. You don't want to do that. You want someone who's going to come in, decent at writing copy, knows how to produce their own graphic design, knows how to produce their own videos, knows how to work with call tracking. At the bare minimum, you're paying $2,000. Naturally, if you get teams or extremely proficient elite buyers, you're paying the 5 figures per month, which for some organizations, it might pencil out. But again, I just want to be super mindful of the reality that a lot of the attorneys watching this are solo practitioners. Just know that your competition is more than likely investing at least $1,000 a month just in ad spend, aside from the investment level required to manage these channels. Now with earned media is great because it's like referrals, right? You have referrals within your attorney network, within your community, within your prior clients. Those are the bread and butter. Nothing can beat referrals in terms of unit economics to acquire cases, but they're finite, right? One thing that I love about earned media is that you can promote really good news if you have a system for it. So reviews, emphasis on these 5 stars surrounding reviews. You want to have as many reviews as possible. Some could say that this isn't a marketing channel. I disagree. When someone is done working with you and it's a happy outcome, You want to make it part of your standard operating procedures to take a photo and have them give you an audio review and a written review and a video review. And you want to leverage that not just for content, but for publishing wherever reviews are collected. So I don't think any of these channels are nearly as effective in conversion as reviews. Now, don't break any rules. Don't try to fake reviews. The FTC is coming down harder on these. Google is flagging these super well now. You want real reviews. Don't take shortcuts. Go back to your whole client book from day one when you open. Go back. You'd be surprised. A lot of people are willing to give you a few minutes of their time, considering how much work you've done for them if there was a great result. So reviews, big. This needs to be part of your marketing. Telling people how awesome you are and how awesome your team is great marketing. Podcasts. Everyone and their mother has a podcast now. So what podcasts are great for attorneys? I mean, I'm a big fan of attorneys on local podcasts. So I'm in Los Angeles. I love seeing attorneys on Los Angeles facing podcasts. That could even be like a cooking podcast. The idea is that if it's local and your name is attached to it, the audience will make that association that you are a leader in your local market for law. And so if you want to go for national podcasts, I mean, if you get on the Joe Rogan podcast, you probably should turn that down considering how massive an audience he has. However, you want to be anywhere you can. And one thing I love about podcasts, even if it's, something not super in line with your audience, it's a great way to generate content. I'll admit, sometimes I go on podcasts and I ask myself, why am I on this podcast? But I see the upside in the content that I'm going to get from it. I'm going to get probably an hour to an hour and a half of audio or video content, and I can have my team chop it up, some 5-second bits, 20-second, 1-minute bits, and we could repurpose that into content. Again, content that I could feed the algorithm to ultimately be in front of my audience more regularly. So you need to find podcasts. I'm highly recommending local podcasts, but also national podcasts if they're of interest to you. But you want to pitch yourself in front of them. I'll get to that in a moment. Now, live and virtual appearances are just as big. I know some attorneys that have publicists. They love to be on, Fox News or CNN. They want to be a talking head. That's part of their model and it works for them. But most attorneys that just want to be more visible should appear at local events. And so that could be, your local fairs, church events. This could be health fairs, maybe having a booth. Those are live events, right? But also virtual events. Like try to find events that are with like-minded attorneys or like-minded local providers where you can take on the category of legal expert. There are scores of these that are virtual that have a huge benefit to the community. Again, appearances are great channels to create content, video and audio. Guest blogging, still a fan of guest blogging, even though I'm not a big believer that most consumers want to read long form content. Having a guest blog, having a blog that you may or may not have written with your name in the byline gives you an extra SEO backlink. It provides more established credibility that you're a published author. It puts you in front of another website through search so that when people search your name, you appear beyond your website and beyond FindLaw and beyond Google My Business. It just establishes more credibility. And featured social media. I know some PI attorneys that appear on their doctors within their network, and they trade content amongst one another. I think it's a great way to borrow one another's audience. So trying to get someone's social media account is actually pretty effective for thousands of new eyeballs with very little investment. Now, in order to get in front of podcast hosts and event organizers and blog managers and social media managers, you need to be pitched. So I'm a big fan of having, an assistant pitch you to all these media organizations. This could be your traditional media organizations or something super niche down like a blog or a podcast. This is a virtual assistant. You need to have someone supporting you, supporting your message, supporting your brand, your identity, and pitching it to as many people as possible. Just know that you're going to probably send 1,000 emails a month and you might get 10 responses, and that might yield 1 or 2 meaningful appearances that yield a ton of awesome content for you. So it's a win-win. You provide to the community, you provide to the network, you provide to the algorithm, and you get content out of it. So you're looking at probably like 2K plus per month. Now, I want to go back. As you can see, these are the channels that I believe are the highest leverage, highest impact for an attorney today. You'll notice I didn't put anything about TV, radio, or print, or writing ebooks and PDFs. It's just I just don't see them moving the needle. Every single one of these items here move the needle, especially when they're supported by sponsored media or paid ad dollars. So let's go back to that initial HubSpot study of how many marketing channels do marketers leverage. They saw that it was 34% have about 3 that they manage. In my small sample study, it was between 1 and 2 before starting with Abogados Now, was what attorneys were telling me. We just went through 35 plus channels. Not 1, not 2, not 3 or 4, even 5. We did 7x the maximum here. This is what I consider to be the baseline for any attorney seriously trying to scale. And maybe you don't want to make $100 million a year, but even if you wanted to get to $5 million a year, it's going to take at minimum 35 different channels. And that might be upsetting to hear because yes, it does cost more now to get more attention, if not the same amount of attention as a few years ago, because it's so much more competitive. But the success is going to be a function of your output and a function of your trust in these algorithms that put your dialed in content in front of dialed in audiences. So it can seem overwhelming and probably is. It's okay. It's totally normal to think that this is going to cost a lot, probably going to feel a lot different in terms of what you perceive to be your scaling story. But just start easy. Start with 1 a week. So in 35 weeks, or let's call it 2/3 of a year, you should have a fully built out marketing system that's just outputting tons of content on your behalf. Recognize that every dollar you put into this is not an expense. This is an investment. If you have someone pitching your name to podcast hosts, if you have dollars allocated to tens of thousands of new eyeballs on Instagram, your video ads, if you have someone managing your website at a couple $100 a month, that's not going into a black hole. You just made an investment on yourself. You've made an investment on your future. You made an investment on your team. And lastly, let the call volume guide you. You should see more inquiries. You should see more emails or chats or phone calls. For some, they really want revenue to guide them. I think that's important. But realistically, you're looking at a year's worth of work before you start to see the fruits of your labor on the other side. So you'll see it through the call volume. If you're investing meaningful dollars here into these 3 channels, you're going to be in front of hundreds of thousands of new eyeballs, if not millions, if not tens of millions of eyeballs from people that never even knew you and your practice existed. I think that's pretty powerful, but most importantly, it's doable. So get to 1 a week.